Well, welcome back, everybody. This is What the Health, and I'm Dr. Greg Eckel, and I am in a completely different environment. I really want to thank the Yagers, Brandon and Deb Yager of Yager Training, for having me over to film this with the lovely equipment. And I hope that you all really appreciate the sound quality, and maybe tell us in the comments if you really dig the new setup. So we're going to go from there. Now, I'm so excited for this conversation today because we've got half of my staff being trained through the Yager Training Institute. Is it an institute? You call it an institute? It's Yager Training.
Yeah.
Training
Yager
Academy.
Training.
Yeah.
Excellent. And, we've been talking about the different facets of what Neuro Linguistic Programming is, and then your specific, maybe brand and what you brought your hearts into it and the kind of the fine tweaks that you've done. And I've been training my staff every day on they are the field. We've anchored the door when people come into our center as envisioning everyone that comes through the doorway as being healed, including themselves. And then I want to get into...
I love that.
Yeah, I want to get into that because, the future of medicine is frequency, sound, and light. And I've really seen, I have a working hypothesis as well of in neuroregeneration, there can be unresolved trauma of this lifetime or ancestral lineage stuff. And I want to just have that percolate for our conversation today. So that's the lead in. So I'll just open it up. First, tell us, how did you guys get into this? What is Yager Training about? What's the mission that you guys are up to?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for letting us be here today. We're excited to dive right in. So Neuro Linguistic Programming is the science of communication and the science of success. And it's the science of how to go back and repattern and program things that are no longer serving you. And the reason why I'm sharing with that is to pre-frame that my life, the reason why I got into this work is because I had a lot of baggage. Back in 2011, I was in rock bottom in all areas of life. And I'm sure if your listeners have experienced that before, you know that it's really painful. I was in a career that was completely wrong for me. It was completely against my soul's values. I felt like I was dying every single time I had to put on the mask to go to work. I was in and out of abusive relationships. And I'm sure that there's people listening right now that you feel trapped because you really want to have a divine relationship, and yet you keep attracting the same old pattern over and over again, and you don't understand why. And that was me. And I also believed I was an addict. So for over 16 years, I used alcohol, drugs, any type of thing that could fill the void that I felt inside. It was so painful to be in my body, just being myself. And so I was numbing the pain. In the career that I was telling you about, I was a stripper and I was a sex worker. And I did that because, and there's nothing wrong with dancing or sex work in general, but the reason why I was doing it is because I didn't believe that I was good enough to do anything else, and I was trapped. And so I was looking for change. I was looking for a way out, and I prayed. I prayed to the universe. I prayed to God to ask, for help. And two people came into my life at the right time, and they inspired me to take these trainings, and it rocked my world. Just to give you context, I was using Xanax, Adderall, Oxycontins, Loratabs, smoking meth, and drinking a fifth a day.
Yeah.
And I went into that container like that. And that was a way of just maintaining who I was. I cut all that stuff cold turkey in the event. Now, I'm not saying that anybody that's doing that type of stuff should cut it out cold turkey. However, the power of the tools, it enabled me to be free of that. For the very first time in that container, the part of me that was constantly berating and constantly just screaming at me and saying that you're not good enough, you're disgusting, you're shameful, you're unworthiness, stopped. And for the very first time, I started to see the sprout of self-love grow. And I, very shortly after that, a year later, I met this beautiful man at the next level training. We actually met in personal growth and development. And then the real journey of healing took place because he helped me create a container where I could actually go through all the traumas that was keeping me in that feedback loop. And so the work is so powerful, and that's why we're so excited to bring it to the clinic and to share it with the world.
Awesome.
I think that's the power when the mind totally aligns and your belief systems come online of what people really want to attract and create in their life when it comes to belief systems, their values, their goals, their manifestations, and then coupled with powerful tools at the unconscious level, because that's where we hold most of our baggage is at the unconscious level, and the brain is such a powerful thing when everything's activated at the same time, like anything's possible. That's what I truly believe. That's where people have walked away from massive chronic disease and chronic illness, and in the past we've said, oh, these are misdiagnoses. Were they, or did the body just heal itself like that? Mm-hmm. And so that's how deep this work goes. I got into NLP very similar reasons, but more for the business side. A lot of people know NLP for, sales, for communication, for marketing. A lot of copywriters get NLP trained. There's a lot of highly trained people on this planet to maximize their life, their businesses. It's kind of that secret sauce that no one really talks about. And it's an incredible tool for leadership. I mean, you can become a better human being simply because you're upgrading your software. And so majority of people right now, we're living in this society that's a software that has been running on autopilot for centuries. And, it's not always the most empowering system. And so, as an example, I was, I didn't go to college because I didn't want to be like my father. So I saw my father get fired from his job at 12 years old. Right. I jumped into real estate at 18 years old, took massive action, built a business, and I hit that glass ceiling like so many people do, because they go to school, they follow the path that everyone says, go to school, get a degree, buy the white picket fence house.
It's going to make you happy.
And then all of a sudden, 5-10 years later, that vision doesn't turn out to be as glorious as we thought it was going to be.
Crisis.
Yeah.
And so, within 5 years, I hit that glass ceiling in my life, and, my health was falling apart. I was in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. And the funny thing is, when I was young, I was mentored by my grandfather, my brother and I both. And we knew about this stuff when we were young. I mean, I was listening to Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy at 12, 13, 14 years old. And I got back on that vision of just work hard, longer, harder, better, faster. And stress myself out.
The grind.
And, grind of making money and building this successful life, whatever that means. And so, my life kind of was upside down around age 25, 26, where I came back into this work. And I was burnt out in real estate, and I wanted to be a better leader. I wanted to communicate more effectively. I wanted to create just a better structure and a better culture in my office and in my life. So personal growth is what I was missing. So many entrepreneurs that are missing that personal growth. So I found this work, had a huge breakthrough, got out of the unhealthy relationship, got healthy again. And then I met her like within 4 months of doing all that. And, after my first training, I made a lot of money because I had the vehicle, but I just didn't have that clarity in my mind. I didn't have the ability to exquisitely communicate my thoughts. And I thought that I knew what I was doing until I realized I wasn't being honest with all the baggage that I was carrying. And once I decided to let that go, life was a lot lighter.
So I'm getting my spidey sense of chills here, and the direction that I want to go is around this component of the subconscious and what people don't realize. Like, I like to say, this is a dangerous neighborhood to go into by yourself for everybody. and because you don't really, if the programming of where we're at. So I'm going to pick on Parkinson's. And I talk to people every day that they come in and say there's no known cure for Parkinson's. I'm getting ready to publish a study of 5 case series of 5 people with no evidence of Parkinson's disease. So if somebody's walking around with a thought pattern of, I'm never going to get better. Like, it's agreed upon on the interwebs that if you have this diagnosis, and this can be for any diagnosis, like if people, really wear anxiety, Lyme, I'm depression, I have PTSD, there's a difference or a clarity of communication and languaging that I got introduced to Milton Erickson early on in my career from my colleague and friend, Dr. Greg Nye. And now going through your training, I'm really reminded of, like, I've just embedded these thoughts in me of our words matter.
Absolutely.
And so that component, bringing that into the discussion around neuro linguistic programming, like what does that mean? And then where do you take that in this conversation for health? People walking around with their baggage of limiting beliefs, subconscious habits and patterns of like, why is this always happening to me?
Absolutely.
So neurolinguistic programming, linguistic is the middle letter. So it's the power of the word, how we communicate to ourselves internally. And that's not just with words, it's also the picture, sounds, feelings, taste, smells, and self-talk. So the entire package of the movie of what we're creating
Now you said that really quickly.
So we have this internal movie that we're playing inside our mind, as well as experiencing the external movie as well. And so the pictures that we make in our mind, the sounds that we hear, the feelings that we feel because of what we're seeing and hearing, the taste, the smells, and then the self-talk of how we communicate to ourselves. What are we saying to ourselves? Or what are we perceiving and sensing and processing? So this entire package, this is our focus, which then is communicated to our behavior, and that then creates the result. So if somebody has a focus that so they're talking to themselves, I have this XYZ, or I am disabled, or for me, my story was I was stupid. I had a learning disability. I was ADHD. I also thought I was bipolar.
Those are identities.
It was an identity
Massive
statement.
identities.
And so I believe this. So I was telling my body intelligence to do that behavior. I was creating that result in my life. And then I was also, because I was vibrating, like we're talking about energy and frequency, I'm vibrating at that energy. I'm going to then magnetically attract situations, circumstance, people telling me all those different things
To support that.
Support that belief system.
Because that's what you're manifesting. That's
Yeah.
what it's literally comes down to where is your focus, right? And if I said I don't want XYZ disease, I'm still focused on the disease.
And
The
that's
mind doesn't process the
in
negative.
that component of where attention goes, energy flows.
Exactly.
Right.
100% vibration and frequency.
And so when somebody is sick, and you know this, they don't feel good, right? They have all these circumstances in their life. They feel like a victim of their body. They feel like a victim of circumstance. And so then when they go Google something, or a doctor, we call it the white coat hypnotist, because it's an authority figure telling them, this is why you're experiencing, this is what's wrong with you. And so then for me personally, when I got diagnosed with things, and a lot of people that we've spoken to, when they get diagnosed, they're like, oh, now I understand that this is why it is. However, that identity, by buying into that as a way of being, doing, and having for the rest of your life, and making it a law in your universe, because when you say that I have this, it is a belief system that will create law in your universe, which will then always be that way.
It'll
instead
dictate.
of, oh, this is just taking a test at this moment in time, and this is the feedback that I'm getting, and I can change. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's where people get stuck, and then they wear it as a badge of honor of why they can't have the life that they want.
Right. They have confirmation, like, hey,
Confirmation.
look at all this evidence as to what the way the world is for me right now.
Yep.
And you know what I tell my patients is like, look, how's that serving you? Like, if you really like it, like, hold on to it by every means. You got free will over there. But if you want a different reality, or you want a different outcome, you have to do something different.
Exactly.
So that brings up this component, like there are programs running in our systems that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
They're-
And what is the root cause?
Most of those programs to that point, they're not even ours.
Yeah.
They're at birth. We literally have an operating system from mom, dad, great grandfather, all
Cultural.
of our lineage, whatever that lineage may be. And so those belief systems, those values, they're already installed in us. Then when we go through the imprint period and we're growing up in the socialization period, then we're just adopting and soaking up like a sponge soaks up water in a bucket. We're literally soaking up everybody and everything around us. So if we were in a traumatic, violent upbringing, that's inside of us now, right? If we have this empowering, loving family, that's inside of us now, right? And we adopt those values and those habits and those behaviors. And so that's what's fascinating, is how one situation can happen to two different people. As like an example, my twin sister and I, held back in the second grade. One of us goes this way and one of us goes this way. It's like, that's exactly how that happens.
Yeah.
And from my perspective is that it all boils down to what happened before this lifetime. So what is the root cause of the symptomology that then is getting the diagnosis now? Was it in this lifetime in childhood or even later on? Was it in the womb? So the timeline work that we do with quantum time technique, we go back and revisit these traumas and these memories, these negative memories, and we transmute them. We change the story and empower people. And we also allow that energy to leave the body to then repattern in the field to health and wellness. And so what we see is that a lot of times it will be on the genealogical timeline, which we know in this world is called epigenetics. So we're going back on these memories where their ancestors actually had trauma that then created the pattern that changed the DNA for this person to have this type of symptomology that gets passed down through the generations. It also works with belief systems. It also works with habits. It also works with behaviors. So all that gets passed down through the lineage. Then we also have the soul. For some people, if they believe in past lives, some people don't. 50% of the population does. So what is the soul's consciousness? How did that person die in a different lifetime? Was that carried through the memory of the soul body that's showing up in the physical body in this now? And then what happened to the womb? Because we see a lot of times people will get dis-ease or because of trauma or even belief systems fascinating around money in the womb, by picking up what was going on with mom and dad. Maybe they were fighting over money, or maybe mom was watching TV and that person in the womb perceived it have to do with money. We've seen wilder things. So it's just fascinating what
So that is what
happens.
really excites me about this work, because there are these kind of subconscious programs that are running every day. So, it's kind of that neuroscience component of you're expecting to have a different reality, but you're running the same story. Like 86% of your thoughts are the same thoughts you had yesterday, and you're expecting a different outcome. And there's not a great way to, if we can get under that and really bring consciousness to it and awareness for people. Because my job as a physician got really hard when I really understood, like, hey, that could be really trauma roots in this lifetime, or the epigenetic change of great grandmother, or whatever that timeline is. And this QTT, this is your kind of gift to the world of your iteration of NLP. So I want you to talk about that more.
And timelines have been around for like thousands of years. William James,
Socrates was talking about
Socrates
timelines.
talked about timelines and just how we store time in some linear fashion. Doesn't matter in what direction. That's why we love Milton Erickson's work, because everything we do is hypnosis. We're hypnotizing ourselves by the words that we speak, right? And how we talk to ourselves internally and how we speak to others externally. So that to me is right there. That's this beautiful work is we don't, there's even neuroscience research that we don't really remember our past the way we think we do. In other words, events happen and we think we remember it this way based on our filters. So it's kind of like the elimination diet. If somebody's obese and they want to lose weight, it's like, well, let's look at first all the things you're eating that could be a factor. It's the same thing in the mind. Well, what's the information that you're consuming? What can we sift through and get new learnings and perspective that empowers our past instead of plagues the past? Because somatically, we store trauma in the body. It's in the brain. It's everywhere. It's even around us in our field. And so what's fascinating is because of frequency and vibration, we'll actually attract people to teach us where it is in us, to help us let it out. Like, I think we're a divine species where we're trying to learn and grow from others, our past experiences, and we're just simply trying to get this stuff out of our body. Most people just don't have the tools to do that, right? Or they're not conscious that, oh yeah, that thing that happened at 10 years old, that sexual abuse, that actually has an effect of how I've made my decisions moving forward as an adult. And that's a fascinating thing that affects the health.
Yeah, it's fascinating how it shows up in the body. And it, ultimately, from my perspective, it gives you ultimate freedom and wisdom. So instead of being a victim of your past or your lineage or your DNA, you have freedom.
Yep.
And you have the ability to optimize and upgrade and up-level it. And all of the stuff, all the things, the traumas and the dramas you went through in your past actually is harvesting for gold. Because those places, the most challenging, adverse times that you've ever had, actually have some of the greatest, most profound wisdom and learning that you can use in your life to accelerate your consciousness, as well as give back to the planet and to raise a vibration of others. And so we look at it as going back and harvesting the gold of all the wisdom that your ancestors went through, as well as yourself, to then be a better person. And for an example, we had this gal that was coaching with us. She was plateaued. She would lose weight, and then she would lose weight, then gain it, and then lose weight, and then gain it. And then she was hitting a plateau. She was doing everything right. She was eating everything correctly. She was dieting correctly. She was doing all the things. We did a detailed personal history. Her lineage went through the Armenian genocide. And so we took her back on her lineage timeline, and she let go of so much rage and hurt and sorrow and grief. And she came back and she felt 10 pounds lighter. Within 30 days, she had lost 30 pounds, and she kept it off.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating.
I want you to share more stories of that, because there is, when we're talking about lifestyle medicine and creating change of having our bodies heal, and we see that, like, oh, I talk to conventional docs all the time. They're like, oh, you know, you have it easy because you've got the motivated individuals. And I'm like, I don't know necessarily think that is true. Like, they're just self-selecting of the motivated people to make change. I think it's because, one, we spend some time with our patients, and we connect on this deep level, and we're bringing in these techniques to help with unconscious, subconscious patterns that people are not even aware of. And so utilizing, like, training my staff, and then also putting this in for our patient base to really empower them. Like, this whole component, and Brandon, you said it, of like, we're divine beings. And really my goal as physician is to really empower somebody to realize they have the tools and the ability for their innate intelligence really wants to be whole and healed.
Absolutely.
And my job as physician is to remove obstacles to cure. Hold that. I definitely cheerlead. I sometimes have red pom-poms, and I pull those up for my patients. But having that, and one of the components, so one on behavior change like this, like she realized, she probably didn't even know that was there, those emotions. And to get in touch with that and release it, and then boom, immediately she's able to then have her weight go down and maintain it off without the struggle, the trials, the tribulations, all of that work. What other things have you seen as just as a side effect of doing the work with you guys?
Absolutely. There was a guy we worked with, I think it was 5-6 months in the womb. He had let go of this huge release with fear. And, you know, he felt so compelled to reach out to his mom. He's like, hey, you know, Mom, is there anything that like happened at like 5?
Well, by the way, he was plagued with anxiety.
He was plagued with anxiety, and he wasn't moving forward in his life. So he wasn't really connecting with relationships too. And I think money was an issue for him. And so he's like, Mom, is there anything going on? Like, what happened at like 5-6 months in the womb? You know, did something happen? And she's like, did your father tell you? And he's like, what? No. And she's like, okay, well, we were on a motorcycle, and we were 5-6 months, you were in the womb, and we actually had an accident, and I rolled off the motorcycle, survived. And she said, I had this massive fear for my baby.
Oh, wow.
And like,
it was affecting his mental health.
Wow.
We also had another individual that I just had this in my mind. Oh, it was a mom that came to the event. Her daughter struggled with seizures, and she did as well. And it was passed down through the generations. And so she went back on the generational timeline, and there was some sort of trauma, some sort of shock that caused the original root cause of it. She cleared it out in herself, and their daughter started to heal. So it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
And this is not the only story we've heard about that.
that's why we call it quantum, because
Quantum
time
quantum.
is not linear.
And
It's
I
quantum.
like that concept, which I don't think a
It's
lot
the
of folks
field.
understand, right? So where you can clear your family lineage timeline forward and backward is what this is talking about, which
Yep.
is really out there, but really true, because we're seeing effective change. Here, the mom heals herself, and her child is now getting the benefit of that.
Well, and part of this social program, exactly. Part of the social program is our genes control who we are. And we know that
is not true.
That's not
Yeah.
true.
Right.
Epigenetics, you know,
Right.
Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this. You talk about this all the time. It's like our genes don't control us. Our environment controls our genes.
Yeah.
That's like, so in other words, if we're living in a toxic environment, and we've trained over 1,200 people come through our trainings, we've seen so many fascinating things. Like, our beliefs are limitless now.
Yeah.
People getting their eyesight back, people that were walking with from a cane. We had a gentleman that had chronic pain from an accident, lost his arm and had phantom pain. We're able to get it down to a 0. We also had a gal that came through that had cervical cancer, and she was never, the doctor said that she wasn't able to have a baby. And we went back in her history, and we're all free of this, is that she was molested for 17 years by her caretakers. And we know that from this perspective, from a trauma-related disease, that cervical cancer a lot of times is correlated to sexual abuse. And so we cleared that out, and she's had a baby now. So I mean, it's just stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily working, a lot of our people are entrepreneurs and business owners. They're coming for high-performing tools to be able to be better speakers, leaders, and also for their own personal growth. And the byproduct is these people are having these miracle healings.
Yeah.
Where, like I said, they're getting their eyesight, they're getting their eyesight back, weight loss. Sometimes they've had diagnosis for years and they never thought that they would be able to heal it, and it's healing on its own. So it's the magic of it.
And the other half of people really come through just for the personal breakthrough because of sickness and disease, and they don't even feel safe and comfortable in their own body, right? So that's a lot of the reason why people come through, is because we've helped so many people let go of trauma at a young age, whether it was from their own family members or something that was blacked out memories. They don't even have to remember what happened. They just have to experiment and be open enough and willing enough to kind of investigate their past. And I think that's what's so fascinating about the unconscious mind, is it is such a superhuman computer because it protects us. That's what it does.
Yeah.
Right? When we have a memory that's so negative, what does it do? It sinks it down to the dark depths of the ocean to protect us, to preserve the mind, to preserve the body, so we can function as a whole unit. But what happens when people are slammed in and out of trauma at a young age, it can create fragmentation in the mind, right? And so this can actually produce what appears to be, bipolarism type behavior, 2 different people fighting inside. And I would say that's a big piece of the reason why people feel like, we always ask people, do you ever feel like there's 2 people fighting inside? And they're like, yes. We've talked.
What if you have like 100?
Well, and there's a lot of people do. I personally have done over 2,000 parts integrations.
Yeah.
And because I was very conflicted. And
Deb was my guinea pig.
We
in this
noticed
whole
that
thing.
people that have a
Great
lot
work.
of dis-ease of the body, and according to Hammer's work, which we refer to it a lot, we call it quantum healing, that conflict is one of the biggest things that causes disease, because you're waging a war internally, and it's draining your life force energy that would be normally going back to
For healing.
homeostasis, right?
I mean, Deepak Chopra said this in the 80s, our bodies are the battleground for the war that we wage in our mind. And I love that quote, because it just goes with everything and all the work that we do and at the clinic.
Yeah.
It's whatever happened to us, it's going to play out in the body. And the body is just like, the body keeps score. We got to keep connected. We've got to understand that.
Yeah, those connections. So one of the questions, I think one of the simple ones maybe to ask yourself, like, do you feel safe in the world? And I have been surprised at how many people say no. And if you say no to that question, then this is the work for you, because this can really uncover the why. Why do you feel unsafe in the world? Because there are those lenses that we put on. And, again, I don't want to take anyone's suffering away from them. I tell people, like, look, if you definitely, I suffer with the best of them. I can wallow in it. I can wallow in the dark night of the soul. Like I can. I've been there. And, sometimes that's necessary. You've got to go through it. There's no way around it, behind, medications, drugs, et cetera, to numb it or pretend it doesn't exist. Like, that just gets you into all kinds of other trouble. So my excitement for this work is really, I've had people in my procedure room. So we do intentions before we do a V-cell. What do you want these cells to do for you? And a few years back, when I first got into my fancy protocol, I had a 70-year-old that broke out in tears and said, I don't feel worthy of healing. And I said to myself, I will never allow this to happen again. Somebody to get this far in this process, to have a limiting belief or a thought process in them. So it took some work to unravel as we have cells in her hand ready to be energized to put into her body. But as you can imagine, lots of tears and heart opening process of that. And I really see your work as being really integral for that type of transformation before people get into a procedure with us, where we're asking them to put intentions of what their future selves look like. What do we want these cells to do? Because the envisioning of that intention is very powerful. And in fact, what we see from neuroscience is you envisioning it, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and envisioning it. So if you're going to the gym to bring your future healed self to you, one, stating it in affirmatives of the positives rather than what you don't want, like you had mentioned. So where do you want to go with that?
I feel like that's the reason why we're so aligned, right?
Yeah.
Like that's literally what we're all doing together with our strategic partnership to help humanity and help people heal. Yeah. It's fascinating work, because that to me that's hypnosis. Like exactly that is, I believe 90% of what we do is belief systems. We either believe we do or we believe we can't. We believe we will or we believe we can't. And I think Henry Ford said it best: whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you're right.
Yeah.
And if, and what she was doing unconsciously, not that anybody would ever want to feel like they're unworthy of healing, she was hypnotizing herself into sickness.
Yeah.
That's what people's internal dialogue is of a negative nature. You're either hypnotizing yourself into success or hypnotizing yourself into death and sickness.
Yeah.
And we see this so much, not only in the health space, but in the entrepreneurial space, and most humans really struggle with the worth issue. There's this underlying construct where most people in this world, unless they've done a lot of work, do not feel valuable, good enough, deserving enough of love and abundance. And there's this other construct, is that you deserve to suffer. Or God is punishing you sometimes for deeds.
There's like a shame
which is
construct
connected
there.
to shame, is connected to guilt.
Yep.
So that's why the Big Six breakthrough, which we're bringing into your clinic, is so powerful, because before people ever come and actually do the work of the hypnosis and the healing modalities, all the different things that you're doing, that's freaking incredible, clearing out the stuff, clearing out the anger, because that is keeping them in stress mode, clearing out the sadness and the grief that's holding them back from having a truly healthy immune system. And depression's connected to sadness and grief. And then the fear that's keeping them in flight, right? And then the hurt, which is a lot of times connected to anger, and it's also depressant. And then the shame and the guilt. Without removing the shame and guilt, it's, from our perspective, it's very difficult to heal, because it blocks all the energy in its dense pocket of energy, and the lower root chakra as well as the sacral chakra, so it doesn't flow correctly. So having people let go of that stuff and actually believing that they are worthy, that they are valuable, that they are loving, that they are deserving of love, and connected to source, God, will then allow everything to fall into place. And then clearing out the belief systems of the identity and or the diagnosis, the limiting belief that's holding them back from knowing that it is possible to heal. Because it's an internal belief, but it's also a universal construct that this is the way it is, and you just have to deal with it.
Everybody has the ability to heal. Everybody has everything within them to do what they need to do. I believe that. Like, we all are divine creatures, and we have exactly what we need. We just simply set up this solid foundation to tap into the placebo effect that we already have the ability to do, right? And that's like our root chakra and our sacral chakra. That's where we have all this creation energy. That's how we can heal and literally tap into enormous amounts of energy in the body to do whatever we want to do, to create, to manifest, to make love, to all these things. Like, and
to heal.
People, to heal the body. People don't know how to tap into that, or they've been, programmed that, oh, you can't heal, take this pill. You can't heal yourself. Do this thing that's outside of you, but the healing doesn't happen outside of you. The healing happens inside of you. So to me, it's just building a solid house, not on sand like most people do, but it's building it on a solid foundation of belief structure, belief systems, values, habits, strong,
Boy.
positive emotions.
Yeah, that brings up, I mean, so many different ways like of talking about like what actually are you feeding your mind?
100%.
And I think a lot of folks don't realize, I mean, I call the TV in my household and to my children the propaganda box.
It's called programming for a reason.
It is called programming
It is.
for a reason. And like 54% of ads are big pharma and drug ads. And the way that they're utilizing that box, people have it playing 24/7 in the background of the fear, putting you into fear, amygdala, limbic system, not accessing your prefrontal cortex where that connects into the quantum field of possibilities.
Exactly.
People get upset at me when I say, I'm going to leave the door open for your body to heal itself. I like to say I do a lot of nothing all day. It's the innate intelligence and the information coming in. But we need a fertile ground and a solid foundation. And if we don't, these are massive holes in the bottom of the bucket as far as for healing. It doesn't matter what goodness we put in on the top if we have massive holes. And these are unconscious, big holes that are happening. Those big six emotions. I mean, so many times I see people walking around with grief and sadness. Their spouse died 15 years ago.
Sure.
And it's as if today they just lost them yesterday. And, going through what my process was, I think, I get a lot of feedback of like, hey, thank you for providing hope and a possibility. I'm not claiming cure by any means. It's the person's got to dig deep in there and we've got to uncover. I'm saying we're walking arm in arm, hand in hand. We're going to go the distance with you. You get 100% of our energy and focus. But this component is you've got to be willing to do this work. So I'm wondering what you notice, like what stops people, like, because there's this thing with hypnosis, right? We didn't really get into that of like, it's not like this TV thing of like, look at this watch and this circle. I think that was one thing that was put forth to stop people from exploring
100%.
this. What stops people from getting into this work?
I think the biggest thing is fear of success, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of rejection. What if it doesn't work? Can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yes.
You hear this all the time,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, what if it doesn't? What if it does?
Yeah.
And it's like shifting that thinking. It's like the hangman archetype. It's upside down. What we think is not. What we think isn't is.
Yeah.
And so there's so much to that system of, if people don't trust themselves. So if they don't trust themselves, they're clearly not going to trust others.
Yeah.
And that can come from, again, root cause. Like I feel like this is everything we're talking about is root cause medicine. It's like getting to the root cause of human function. It's not even like healing. It's like, how can we function, as a human being? And so to me, a lot of that, it comes back to hypnosis, and hypnosis simply is this. It's been around for thousands of years. It's simple. Do you follow instructions? That's what hypnosis is. Do you follow your body's intuition, your body's instruction? Can you speak to the ability to heal? Because whatever you say, that's a spell. That's a spell you're casting to the universe. Do you want to be broke or do you want to be abundant? Do you want to heal or do you want to be sick? And people have this negative self-talk. Who do you think you are? What will other people think of me? You can't do that. Why are you going to go run 4 miles? You can't do cold plunge. You can't do these things to get healthy.
This won't work for me.
This won't work.
Yeah.
You should just sit back on the couch and take a nap. Everything will be okay. And this is what we're having this fight inside. Deb had this fight,
Big time.
Right?
Yeah, and you talked about casting spells. I mean, even in the Bible and Scripture, it talks about the power of the word. The power of the word to create reality. And the thing is about hypnosis is it's being done to people every single day, and then people they have a misconception of what it truly is. And the fact is that TV, there's scientific data that shows that whenever somebody plugs into TV, within less than 1 minute, they're in trance.
No, it's like 3 to 5 seconds.
Everything
Wow.
then,
Like
same
that.
thing with social media. Everything then gets downloaded directly to the unconscious mind.
Those
So-
programs are being inserted.
Exactly. And before that, it was plays. And before that, it's also church. And so, not saying that the programming from church is good or bad in nature, but we just have to be thinking about the generational programming that's going on as the collective construct of what is possible for people. And for right now, it is that you are weak, you are not capable, and you're not able to heal.
You're not good enough.
And so that is the general hypnosis, and that's the belief system that people are coming in. And then they have all these other root causes, which is the traumas and dramas in their life where they're hypnotizing themselves into sickness. And so there is a tremendous opportunity, and that's why I love this work, because it's actually teaching people about hypnosis and about how it can be used for beautiful, amazing transformation. It's kind of like a hammer. It's a tool. You could build a beautiful cathedral that helps people ascend, or you could bludgeon somebody to death. It's a powerful tool, but it's not the tool that's bad. It is the intention behind the yielder. And the more people that actually understand the power of hypnosis and the power of the word, and understand when they are getting hypnotized with negative suggestions, which that's pretty much what we see on TV and the general populace. People are hypnotizing themselves into limitation. You can put up your guard and say, hey, where did this information come from? Does this internally feel good for me?
Does it align with
Does
my
it
values?
align with my future and what I want for my children, and to create a beautiful reality? And then you can say delete, cancel, clear. Like I said earlier, when I was talking about a negative story about somebody's transformation, it was a great story. And we don't want to accept those suggestions into the unconscious mind. Just purely by talking about negativity, we could allow that to then get installed. It happens that quick. And so when people understand this, it gives them ultimate freedom to choose what they want to let in or what they want to cancel, clear, and delete.
And governments, companies, corporations across this planet know that so well. Facebook, all these different companies.
Social engineering and the
is a real
background.
thing.
Yeah.
They know that they are hypnotizing people. They're installing negativity. And we actually have, in our level 2, we took an article from 2020. It was fascinating. Experts are convinced. The numbers are climbing. You know, doctors
form of hypnosis.
say,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
Extended quote by authority.
when someone says experts, who are these experts? So our mission is helping people critically think
like-
through information.
Yeah.
And they know
Whenever
that
you hear everybody knows, we go the opposite direction, because that's most likely the mob.
Likewise, you know,
everybody knows XYZ, right? And so it's
Which
an
is
installation.
hypnotic language patterns.
yes.
This is Milton Erickson's
It's
hypnotic
Milton's-
language pattern.
that they've used for negativity.
And they're using it for will. So we can't
To sell more soap
Whoever
is what
they
I
are.
train my kids on, of like all of the advertising is really there for sales. So if you make people fearful, they don't trust anyone, etc.
Exactly.
You can they consume a lot more.
Big
This is why I
pharma.
believe that we have a huge society right now. Small business is dwindling, and people are rejecting sales and money at a greater level more than ever right now. So our thing is like, we have, you know, coaches, healers, light workers. We have business owners. We have small solopreneurs out there having incredible tools, but they're afraid to go out there and share this work. They're afraid to get out there and sell their services to go make impact. Well, if we're not selling our services and serving others to make this impact, we're not making any impact at all, right? It's kind of like if we leave a great book left on the computer, who is that helping if nobody reads
Yeah,
it?
no one.
We could be the greatest trainers in the world, but if nobody shows up for our trainings, no butts in seats,
Right.
who are we helping? Right?
Yeah.
We're not helping anyone. And so to me, it just goes back to this work and how we've got to get it out there, help people critically think through the information, running all this logistical data, emotions through our filters, our critical mind, without this reaction, without the emotional reaction of, you know, already going, this is a forced choice dichotomy, left, right, black, white, blue, red, yes, no. And that's what we're living in, is this dichotomous thinking that is crippling and having everyone communicate at the most unconscious level. We're about conscious communication, conscious language.
And the interesting about the dichotomy of going back to the parts that people have inside, the internal conflict versus the external conflict. What do you think the external conflict is doing to people's bodies too?
Yeah. Well, it is that concept of what is
As
happening
above.
in the macrocosm is happening in the microcosm, and really looking at it in a unity consciousness component. All of the conflict that we see in the world is actually its internal projection out. So it is really on each one of us. And why I have this platform of What the Health, the Doctor's Chat, is to bring it right to you so that you understand, like, this isn't coming from the propaganda box. This isn't coming, the government doesn't actually want you to understand this. And it really is in my mission is to train and educate people how powerful we truly are. We are seeing amazing results clinically in the center because we are training our patients that they actually have the power. And utilizing these tools, and why I really wanted to bring you on, and this is the first of many. I have so many other directions that I want to go with you to and to share with all of you. If you liked today's show, please give us a like, give us a 5-star review, and share what you are taking out of this educational component, out of this episode of What the Health, because other people, you will make a difference. Other people were catching on. It's growing, and it's really exciting to put this forth, like painting the picture of the more beautiful world our hearts know and desire together, and empowering you all out there listening. Like, we wouldn't be doing this without you. So thank you for showing up. Keep it coming, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us on, Greg.
Yeah.